We can watch videos here, we can read books here, but we only very rarely meet actual Aboriginal people here. So to be able to actually meet the people was a wonderful thing. They also had a large Ainu contingent from Japan. Ainu civilization is fascinating. It's something that I have read about most of my life, but I've never met an Ainu person because you don't generally meet them outside of Japan. So to be able to actually meet and interact with people there who come from the Ainu culture was a wonderful thing. It's something that I don't think will ever happen to me outside of Parliament. Um, Certainly not in the number of Ainu people who were there. I mean, I'm sure there are many Ainu who live in the United States, but I don't know that you'll ever meet a large number all at once who can tell you about their culture, who will share their sacred songs, um, and talk about their way of life. And hello to Sir Ebony in the chat room. It's good to see you, Ebony. And I want to congratulate Ebony and Abby on their recent marriage. Congratulations. And hello to Kazan in the chat room. It's good to see you, Kazan. Um, I love being able to say hello to everyone. Hello to Tom in the chat room. It's good to see you, Tom. And these are some of the things I love about Parliament. And again, it's people. Facts are fascinating, good to know, but so much better if you can meet a person. I've often had people ask me about the books they should read or what they should do when they've just become a pagan. And everybody else tells them, go read everything you can. And I don't tell people that. I tell them, go meet some pagans. Go interact with some people. See if you like the community. Because to tell you the truth, the books aren't necessarily going to show you what you're actually going to encounter. They're going to share with you the philosophy, the theology, and often they will suggest that the philosophy and theology of their particular author is universal, and you find out later it's not. But when you go into the community and you meet people, then you find out what you're actually moving into. And so my advice to people who've just become pagan, particularly now that we have the internet where you can meet so many more people so quickly, is, meet the people, talk to them. Don't mistake the written word for real life, because although books are very valuable, very helpful, very informative, but they don't always reflect what you're actually going to find. Whereas if you actually go into the community, you'll see for yourself. And Tom says, when and why have books become such a big thing? Well, the answer is very simple. Our community has, through most of its history, existed in isolated pockets. Books and newsletters were our only way to communicate over large distances, so they were naturally a big thing. Throughout the 20th century, that was certainly true. The 21st century, with the coming of the internet, is a little different. But we have that ingrained habit of wanting to go buy books. And books certainly, again, are wonderful. They're good. I'm not saying otherwise. I'm saying you'll understand the community better by meeting the people in the community. And Ebony says the energy exchanges and knowledge exchanges with so many different leaders and practitioners was truly remarkable. And that's exactly what Parliament is all about. That's why you go, in my opinion. Now, there are other reasons. I mean, Parliament has been described as the Olympics of religion. And it's one of the places where religions, especially smaller religions, make an effort to show themselves as they wish to be seen, and get to know other often larger religions and impact how they are looked at. So there's that very practical aspect from an organizational level. But from a personal level, it is those energy and knowledge exchanges. And that's wonderful. And Tom says, I learned when books were not present. Well, that's wonderful for you. I can't say the same. I was given my first book at the age of 10. I was trained in a familial tradition, but there were plenty of books available at that time. Certainly not by comparison today, but many were already available. Um, and they didn't necessarily reflect the teachings of our tradition, but I was told that right up front, that people come from different backgrounds, they represent different attitudes and ideas, and you have to expect that. I have noticed that not all authors make that point themselves and give the impression that their views are universal. And, when I was writing, I was very careful to try to say that, there are different ways of looking at these things. Even though I was writing from the point of view of the Correllian tradition, I always tried to point out there were multiple ways of seeing this. Different traditions saw certain things, particularly certain things, differently, and that this is important to be aware. Now, Kazan says, I like to read books because not many deaf pagans are out there to meet. And then someday, and hopefully there will be more deaf pagans as we go forward. I know that people have been working on translating pagan terminology into sign language for some time. And we have at various times had sign language practitioners in the tradition who will do things like translate lustration. And I think that has been very important. I wish we had more of it. But we do as we can. Samantha says knowledge is power. Knowledge is power, but it's also the sensible implementation of that knowledge. But again, the thing about reading all the books you can read, which is the advice most people are given, is that you need to remember that what you're doing is you're reading many different points of view, none of which is likely to speak for everyone. And as long as you remember that, that's good. But when you go into the community, it becomes immensely obvious. And for me, I think part of it is, I always thought of myself as an introvert. And I suppose I am, but I'm also very much a people person. I enjoy talking with people. I enjoy meeting people. And I find that to be my preferred method of learning. I learn far more working with the Fellowship of Isis in Chicago, for example, than in the nearly 10 years I had belonged to the fellowship before going there. Because there was a community there. There were ICMs there. There were people who were practicing, as opposed to the ICM newsletter. It made all the difference in the world in understanding what that community is like. The ICM community is a wonderful community. And I want to take a moment, while we're talking about Parliament and community, to make a couple of plugs. One of them is for my seminar this coming Saturday, dealing with lessons of the Parliament. And if you are part of my Patreon at the seminar tier, you're eligible to go to that. Or you can buy a ticket if you're not part of my Patreon at CorrellianPublishing.com. Also at CorrellianPublishing.com, we are having a special now through September 4th, and offering a number of items at half price. And those items are our first degree paperback book, our third degree paperback book, the 5 Mystic Secrets multilingual paperback book, the Tarot with Rev Don video, the Tarot Reversals with Lady Crystal video, the Common Book of Witchcraft and Wicca ebook, and the Correllian Regalia ebook. All at half price, and you can get that price by using the discount code SPECIAL with a capital S. And Samantha asked, will there be a video for the seminar? And the answer is yes, there will be, which should be posted at Patreon. So far I've done that with all of the seminars, and those videos are available to the people who could have attended the seminar, whether they did or not. And Kazan says, I completed with first degree, even though I still review my first degree book. That's always a good idea. And I'll tell you, when I wrote the first degree book, I included a lot in it. And many people tell me if they go back and read it a second or even a third time, they find things they didn't see the first time. This is actually even more true if you do this after completing subsequent degrees, because some of the things aren't really obvious until you know other things, but they were there right at the start. Shadow work is one. We don't use the term shadow work anywhere in first degree, I don't think. Well, we do we do toward the latter part, but it's right there in the first chapter. We just don't use that word because it's scary to some people. But you start doing your shadow work right at the very beginning, because we think that's very important. Um, there's never a time you don't have shadow work. No matter how far you go, no matter how accomplished you become, there's always going to be shadow work to be done because we're constantly um, creating shadow. Because this is just part of the nature of life. It's not something bad. It's not something that we can avoid. It's part of life that there are certain things we just don't always see, or maybe we don't want to see, and we have to find them in our shadow and heal them there. It does get easier as you go because the deeper issues have often been dealt with earlier. Although there may still be deep issues to be dealt with no matter how far you go, because we've been here a long time. We've been here through many lifetimes. So there's a lot of shadow for every person. But it's well worth the effort of working with it. And you can tell when people have done more shadow work versus less. It will show. And when you do it for yourself, you find that your relationship to life is just much easier. There are so many things in the shadow. And I think that the Parliament of the World's Religion is kind of shadow work for the earth itself. There is so much shadow accumulated in the world's religions, some more than others. Those that have held the most power, I think, have the most shadow. And I think that the interfaith movement and the Parliament of the World's Religions in particular is a way of working with that shadow to heal it, which I think is a very important work that is ongoing. Now, Kazan says, I have a question. As I am first degree clergy and I'm allowed to share some experience from the first degree book to my friends, or am I allowed to share some experience from the first degree book with my friends if they're interested? In Facebook, absolutely. The books are published, so anyone can buy one. So of course you can share anything you would like to share. And our attitude generally, we're not big on secrecy. We've never been believers in that for the most part. I mean, we do believe in keeping the actual initiations secret, mainly so that they're fresh for each person. But it's not like there's any big, deep, dark secret there. And it's just that it is, we think, a little more effective if you don't know what to expect. But, people have certainly talked about them, we know that. And that's not really a big deal when it all is said and done. Oh, and Kazan says, I'm concerned about copyrights. Well, bear in mind, this is not a legal statement, but I don't see that what you're talking about should be an issue, particularly since you are clergy. But make sure people know where it comes from, and that should take care of any problem, I would think. But again, that's not a legal statement. That's off the top of my head. I don't see that it would be an issue. I mean, you can go to YouTube and watch the videos. We've always been very open, and certainly plan to continue to be. I am not a great believer in the idea of secrecy. A wise man once said that we must guard the mysteries by constantly revealing them, and that kind of is my point of view as well. That a lot of people talk about whether people are ready for certain things. If they're not ready, they're not going to understand. And I know that from personal experience. When I was studying third degree back in 1978, part of our third degree studies have to do with things like multidimensionality, probable lives, parallel lives, and things like this. And also things like soul splitting. These are quite advanced concepts. And, back then, when I was first introduced to it, I couldn't wrap my head around it. I wasn't ready for it. And I've always said that when Lady Crystal responded by saying, well, let's not worry about that then. We'll come back to it later. It was one of the best things she could have done and one of the best things I could have learned. Because when we did return to it 6 months later, it all made sense. Because in the meantime, my consciousness had expanded and I'd learned other things that caused it to no longer be a difficulty. And I think this happens even in much more mundane situations. I think there are sometimes things that when we first encounter them, we just can't, if you'll pardon the term, we don't grok them. But then if we give it time and come back to it later, we'll find that it's not a difficult thing at all. Patience, I think, is one of the greatest virtues and one of the best things that you can have. I think that it solves so many problems in life, and sadly, so few people have it. Very often, it's all you need to navigate difficult situations. Not always, but very often. But going back to Parliament, Parliament, we were blessed to have a very large press corps at Parliament. And this included people like Brian Ellicott, Sir Eric Hebert, Sir Arlene Freed, Sir Chad Blackman, Sir Jason Highcorrell, Cosmo Rubiconis, and oh so many more people. And I'd try to list them all, but I'm not going to get them all. But you all did a wonderful job. And when I mention the press corps again tomorrow, I'll probably mention different people. And hello to Angeline in the chat room. It's good to see you, Angeline. And we have a huge number of interviews and other videos yet to be put up from Parliament. We have a very expansive coverage of Parliament to bring forth. And I think that you'll enjoy watching it. I think there's much more there. Last night, we showed the movie Journey to the Parliament on a number of our platforms. If you haven't seen it, I recommend going back and watching it. I think you'll enjoy it. This movie was created to be presented at the Parliament. It made its world premiere there. And it's about the Parliament. It includes some stories from early Parliament days and also people's reaction to Parliament, what it's meant to them. And it includes people like Dave Sassman, Yvonne Conway-Williams, Andrea Joy, Lawrence Lerner, Belladonna Laveau, and a number of Corellians like Chad Blackman, Alyssa Kemp, Phoenix Coffin-Williams, myself. Sir Edward is the primary narrator. And of course, I'm missing someone, but there are many, many people. Elizabeth Hamilton, many people involved. Hello to Anna in the chat room. It's good to see you, Anna. And Kazan says, I watched yesterday. It was awesome. And Anna says, hello, it's great to see you in such good health. Thank you, Anna. And she says, your achievements in representing paganism at Parliament are admirable. Thank you. And I assume that when you say yours, it's all of us. And we all did, I think, a wonderful job. I'm so impressed with the people who came with us to Parliament and the job they did. Everyone I've named and many more people, Maggie de la Yata, Emerald Earthheart, of course, Sir Ebony and Abby were there. And they then had their wedding on Sunday, which is a wonderful thing. And Sir Ebony went home with the peace drum, which I think is a major omen in and of itself, as well as a great blessing. And just so many wonderful people. It was a delight. We got to see lots of pagans and lots of non-pagans. We got to meet all sorts of different people, see all sorts of presentations. Um, for me, the opening procession was a major highlight, um, partly because we were in it, um, but also just the energy. My goodness, the energy was so strong. The dragon was beautiful. That there was a large golden dragon with electric red eyes that marched in the procession. It was beautiful. There were musicians and dancers and people representing many different religious groups. It was truly delightful. Of course, being in procession, I didn't get to see as much of it as I might have otherwise, but we filmed all of it, and it either is or will be available to be seen online. Um, and we were positioned between the dragon and the bagpipers. Not a comment that you hear every day of the week. And we got to we got to talk with people like Oberon Zell, Phyllis Karat, Twyla York, Selena Fox, Belladonna Laveau, and many wonderful people from our pagan community, and also many people not from the pagan community. And hello to Magical Mermaid in the chat room. And Angeline says, I think a lot of non-pagans learned that we are not evil like they have been told. That's, for us, I think, the most important part of Parliament. People get to see us and get to know us in a way that they might not otherwise. And I think this is something we must be mindful of in the world as a whole. Meeting people, showing them that we too are people, that whatever bad things they may have heard about us are not true. And the only people who can do that is us. We have to go out there and we have to meet people and we have to represent. And Parliament is one of the best places to do this because there are people from all over the earth. And that is a truly wonderful experience. But of course, there are also many other interfaith events that I would like to see the Corellian tradition become more involved in. I'd like to see the pagan community become more involved in as it moves forward. But Parliament has been a great place to be, and many other pagan groups are farther involved in interfaith. The late Pete Pathfinder, who was a good friend and mentor to me, was a member of the Washington State Interfaith Council and eventually president of the council, which was quite an accomplishment when you think about the era for a pagan archpriest. And there are just so many things that we can do to tell people that we are not, to quote Angeline, evil like they were told. We are perfectly ordinary, perfectly good people. Now, sometimes we're our own worst enemies in that. But by joking about very negative stereotypes in ways that can be misunderstood, or in places that can be misunderstood by various other things. But there's room for everyone, and there's room for every point of view. But some of us really, I think, need to represent to the world, because the world sees us, and it's only going to see what we show them. And so by showing them that we are good people, I think that we do much to move forward. And Magical Mermaid says, awareness creates acceptance. Very often that is exactly so, and that's exactly the point. So with that, I see that we have reached the end of our half hour. This went really fast. I've certainly enjoyed talking with you. I love spending this time of day with you. I love you all. Let us close with our prayer, as we always do. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we come to you this day with thanks and love for all that you do for us in our lives, and we rejoice in your presence in our lives. And we ask that we can go forward together hand in hand, and that we shall never lose sight of you, for we know you will never lose sight of us. Knowing you are always with us, but from respect, we thank you for your presence, and may you be blessed now and always. And I thank you for your presence. I love you all. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you again tomorrow. And until then, may you be blessed now.